As long as people can understand what we're saying, I think it's all right.
And welcome back, listeners. This is another episode of Go Be Wyoming. I'm your host, Aaron Gray, and joining me today is Zach Gale from Bozeman. Zach, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I want to ask you. I saw an article from Yahoo. Is Bozeman, are the students, tattling on other students for having parties? I saw
Uh,
they were talking about our students going to snitch on other students for having parties?
you know, I know there are some parties that have gone on here at my apartment complex, and there's some
Huh,
people facing some sort of trouble. I think the trouble they're in is for destroying some property, not necessarily having a party.
right.
um, but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if I heard that, to be honest.
Interesting.
So
I just,
yeah,
Bozeman's a little smaller school, like I can see at the big schools that that's going to happen, but um, what a weird time we're in now that we're, you know, uh,
yeah,
snitching on people, having people over. So,
for
um,
sure.
so on today's episode, guys, we're going to talk a little Wyoming high school football. 4A started. We are going to talk about the city of Sheridan's police chief search. We are going to review the COVID relief funds from the CARES Act, as well as some other news. So we've got a lot to go over today. Zach and I are going to talk about the relief funds first. We kind of wanted to go back from our last episode. Zach and I did a lot of research. Luckily, Wyoming does, and kind of Cyrus Western mentioned this, is we're very transparent. So we can find kind of where all the money's going. And it's still kind of interesting. You and I are still trying to figure out, is that extra 57 million, was that from the original set aside CARES Act or not? That's still kind of what's up in the air. But here's kind of some numbers that we found, and we're going to post up the website, State of Wyoming's website on where the money went, wyomingsense.gov/CARES Act. That'll be up on our website. What's interesting, Zach, is the biggest percentage of where the relief funds have gone is small businesses. About 41%. And then education took about 20, 18%, and then kind of just goes down from there. One thing that Cyrus did touch on, and Senator Beitman, is, how quickly has the money come out for businesses? And in my rough calculation, you and I kind of went through, the two funds are still open. We've still got the mitigation fund. People can apply, small businesses, can apply for this still. And there's roughly about a good 200 million left in those funds. So, there's still quite a bit of money left for small businesses. And so, again, that was kind of Senator Beitman's and Representative Western's point of, there's a lot of moving parts, but, there's a lot of people still waiting for the funds, and there's a lot still sitting there. So,
Yeah.
what were kind of your thoughts, Zach, on kind of looking through the numbers there?
Well, it does stand out to me so far. The majority of the money spent has gone towards these businesses. And like you said, there's still money to be used. What I found interesting on the website here shows the three kind of splits of this 1.25 billion that we got. The first, it came out here, it's supposed to come out in 3 installments. So we've gotten those 2 installments already. The first installment came out May 15th. That was 450,000. July 15th, we got another 400,000 sent out. And then here in a couple days, there will be another 400,000 up for distribution. And then below that bar on the website here, there's how much we've spent of that 850 million. And there's about 797 million that we've spent. So we've got another 3 million-ish, 2 million that we can spend before, the 15th of this month.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what stood out to me, and so far 41% of that 850 million was for businesses. And that came out in about 3 waves. That website again shows those 3 waves of the economic relief.
Mhm.
Um, and first was for businesses with 50 employees or less. Um, and that was originally $50 million. And then when the governor saw how much people needed that, added another 50 million. So it ended up being about 100 million for that first phase of business relief.
Yep.
Um, what's and then talking about what we discussed last week, that 57 million for the university and then the community colleges. Education is coming in second with 18%. So I think it's fair to say that 57 million came from the COVID. I think that was the original plan too. We discussed that. Speaker of the House, Harshman,
Mhm.
was wanting to send more, and it would come from that the CARES Act.
Right.
Um, what I think is interesting, there's another graph on here that shows what they're expecting total CARES Act funding to be. So it looks like economic and business will still be number one. Local government is going to move from way down the list up to second, and then education will be a third
Yep.
for all that spending. But yeah, I think it's a really nice website, really easy to read and really interactive, so you can see just where all that money's going.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think Senator Beitman kind of hinted on his interview that this was going to happen with the local government deficits, that some of
yeah,
this COVID money is going to, and like you just said, it kind of has recently changed now. Local governments now are number two in the percentage,
yeah,
kind of overtaking the education. Um, yeah, it was kind of good that we got into the research a little bit more. Those articles made it seem like we were giving another 60 million to the
yeah,
school when really education had 150 million set aside, from the CARES Act. So now, you could debate, is our K through 12 more important, than giving, college students money, that's could be the debate that,
right.
but, anyways, other than that, I think those are the big ones, Zach. You've got some other interesting things that we've used it for. Um, I would imagine the healthcare system, that's going to probably get into like fourth place, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Um, you know, uh, yeah, that's, I think, and I think something to keep an eye on is kind of the state agencies and the local governments. How much are we,
right,
um, bailing out our local governments, due to a deficit. So,
right.
um,
Yeah.
but
Um,
yeah, to kind of reiterate what you were saying is the wyomingsense.gov. That's a great website, very clear. And then the Wyoming Business Council, their website's very clear, what's been paid, how many people applied, who's still in limbo, all that kind of stuff. So, um, pretty good transparency, as Representative Western would say. So,
yeah, for sure, for
um,
sure. Yeah, what's interesting with that, about it looks they're projected to give local governments about 215 million. Um, and then, as we're going to talk here in a little bit, the budget cuts are around $250 million. So it's an interesting number there.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah. So Governor Gordon last week kind of had his first proposal, and yeah, it was about 250 million. Um, he said, we haven't gotten any numbers yet, but all five agencies are getting cut supposedly. One report said about 20, 30 state employees, which I'm trying to decide if that's a lot or not. I don't want to say not enough, but um, in the essence of who reported that, like, are they trying to say that's a lot, or are they saying that's not
Right.
enough?
Yeah.
That's 20, 30 people losing a job, but um, you know, um, that is interesting that the local government's getting the CARES Act is pretty much about what this cut is. So again, I think our interview with Senator Beitman, maybe he had some foresight, but we'll see. This isn't. It's only been a week since he proposed these cuts. This is going to be a discussion all the way up till January, I would imagine. So, and
Yeah,
through the session. So,
for sure.
um, yeah, what
Yeah.
were your thoughts there, Zach?
Well, I just wanted to point out what those five, uh, agencies are.
Mhm.
According to, oh, I forget which, or I think you have it here. It was reported by Cowboy State Daily. Um,
Yep.
the the Wyoming Department of Health is going to be receiving cuts. The Department of Corrections, Department of Family Services, and then the University of Wyoming. And then I didn't see what the fifth agency was in that article. Maybe you saw it. But those are what we're looking at. Those areas are going to get cut. And that's a really good article that kind of talks about what to maybe expect. Again, we don't know how much or what programs necessarily are going to be cut and all that, but it gives you a good idea of what to expect.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think there, the other big thing that was in there, it's kind of at the end. There's still a $500 million shortfall. So there's these $250 million cuts, but there's still about $500 million to make up for it too.
Yep.
So we're not out of the weeds. I don't even think we're close to being out of the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be a long, it's going to be a long legislative session, budget session.
Sure.
I think another thing to consider that Gordon did mention last week when he kind of proposed his cuts was, the K through 12, he's encouraging school districts to start, thinking about cutting their budgets, which, I know, kind of being within the school district here in Sheridan, they were having those talks in the summer. I mean, teachers and administrators were already talking about, Craig Doherty, who's done a great job up here, but like they've already been thinking about it and seeing so I mean, I think that's kind of like a duh. I think school districts are like, yeah, no joke. But his timing on some of these things are interesting. So it's anyways, so it's how much is he cutting in those other departments? That could be the fifth agency, is maybe education.
Education, yeah.
So or maybe he's just telling them, like, be prepared if we need to, which 500 million we're probably going to need to. So yeah, so that's kind of our kind of review, kind of going back to our last episode, kind of clearing things up and sharing some of that information with everyone out there. Let's move in. The COVID fund is obviously in relief to the COVID-19. I think we would be remiss of not discussing this most recent news here. You and I have both stated we kind of want to try and stay away from national stuff as much as we possibly can. But anyways, what's interesting is, Zach, when we were prepping for this week's episode, Sunday night, the CDC updates their numbers and pretty much admits that, the tracking of the deaths, you can put it however you want it. We'll just say it was inaccurate. And now they've got it to an accurate count of, did you actually die from COVID and not anything else?
Right.
Now, obviously, there's going to be some differences, because it's all coming from different states and different hospitals. But and that number is significantly lower. Let's see, the CDC says it's 94% that they were saying before are now not COVID. So that means 6% that they were reporting are actually COVID-related deaths. As of when we were doing that, that's under 10,000. So 10,000 people in the U.S. And I think this is just U.S. Is this right, or is this global?
No, I'm pretty sure this is U.S.
This is U.S. Yep. Okay. So we'll make that clear. So under 10,000 deaths in the U.S. from COVID alone. And so, I think what we're going to talk about is, like, what does that mean now for Wyoming? We obviously haven't seen it like cities. and we've got we were given the CARES Act, our governor declared the emergency. But it's kind of fascinating when you look to the east at our neighbor, South Dakota, and that governor, Christy Nome, pretty much, not that we're speaking for her, but she pretty much gave the middle finger to it, and she didn't take any of the money, and they're doing just fine. So, Zach, what's kind of your, take on it in regards to like Wyoming and this new update from the CDC?
Yeah, I think it's kind of tough to compare Wyoming to some of these other places because Wyoming has 500,000 people. But I mean, even look at Sheridan or these bigger areas. I think the total deaths in Wyoming are 6. And I don't know. I mean, you look at Sheridan, who hasn't ordered, even just Wyoming in general hasn't ordered a required mask. And we've only got 6 deaths in 8 months or 9 months, whatever it's been. But I think it's fair to say the prep was overblown, and it's not to say that this isn't a serious thing. It's not to be taken seriously because there's still 183,000 deaths, recorded. Those people had COVID, those 94%, not necessarily they died of it, but it could have contributed, helped lead to that. But I think it is to say, at what point can we start walking back restrictions? And, even just the University of Wyoming, they're really going overboard with restrictions. I mean, compared to Bozeman, I've had in-person classes since day one. They don't get to have in-person classes for another 26 days. And then that's not to mention even the COVID tracking app that they've got and the multiple tests they've had to take before they can show up.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to recognize we can start walking restrictions back. I think we've got enough information now to know that if you're not healthy or you have these underlying conditions, you're the one that should be wearing a mask. You're the one that should be, social distancing or staying away, and quarantining. Yeah, I think it's about time we start having that conversation.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was talking with my parents yesterday. We're going to get into football here in a second, but they're both kind of in that 60 range, kind of retired. And I kind of brought up to them again, look, like we're in August, now we're in September. Okay, that's not like, we're at 6 months. Like the whole goal was 2 weeks. Now we can argue all we want about, did everyone quarantine for 2 weeks? I'm up for a debate about that because we weren't like Japan where we went full lockdown.
Yeah.
But I think I'm with you. We have information now that if you are of that age group, you have pre-existing conditions. And even if you don't have pre-existing conditions, if you're in that age group and you're, you probably are going to feel more comfortable wearing a mask, and
right.
And you and I both will agree, I'm comfortable wearing a mask. If that means let's open up. I think that's the conversation of, look, if you are in that age group, if you have those pre-existing conditions, you take ownership and take care of yourself. And we could talk libertarian views and conservative views all day about like, that's kind of how this works is I have a freedom, you have a freedom. So yeah, I agree. Now schools and universities, that's a whole trickier ball game, and I get it. But yeah, we're about 6 months in now. We have enough information that, and I'm kind of, like I said about the mask thing, like it's either one or the other, fellas. Like either we're all wearing a mask and you open everything up, or
right.
It's well, I mean, that's kind of like, if that's what you want to do, like we'll wear a mask and everything's open, or just say, hey, end these restrictions, and whatever, if you wear a mask, you wear a mask.
Right.
Yeah, so it's I'm with you, and I think that's all we need to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And
So
I mean, go. We can link the CDC website, or even just have just go there and
yeah,
look. I mean, there's 6 million cases. There's 183,000 deaths. Divide those numbers. Divide 183 by 6 million, and you're going to get how many people have made it.
so,
I think that's all we need to say about COVID.
well, and then there's more and more scientists and doctors coming out and saying too, there's even more the contagion rate, like, because young people are very asymptomatic with it. So there's probably more than 6 million cases. Like, and that's another thing is like, anyway, so do your research. I mean, if you think it, anyways, if you disagree with what we just said about the numbers and stuff, you're not going to listen to us anyway. So, it's falling on deaf ears, but, so anyways, just, it's a big shout out to Governor Kristi Noem. That's all I got to say. And, Rand Paul. So, let's go changing gears. So talking football.
There we
So
go.
4A, if you're new to Wyoming sports, 4A starts first in week 0. And we've got an interesting first week, Zach, I will say. The last couple of years, as you know, last couple of years, there's kind of been the 3 or 4, main schools. So the scores are Sheridan High School beat Laramie 45-10. Thunder Basin beat East in a close one, 34-28. And then Cheyenne Central comes out beating the Trona Mustangs 35-21. That's also close. And then Kelly Walsh beats up on Cheyenne South 54-14. And then Rock Springs beats up on Campbell County. That's the other Gillette school, 35-6. I think the big surprise is Central beating NC. And then this isn't new, but Cheyenne East is always very competitive in Thunder Basin. So that was a very close matchup. So,
yeah, those are definitely teams to keep an eye on.
Yep.
And I mean, it's been 4 years since I've played and been, super savvy to the teams, but Kelly Walsh has been on a slow rise, I think, though, since I was, a freshman. They always, they more and more started to show up and play when we would play them. So, Campbell County, that shouldn't surprise me too much. They're still kind of, recovering from the whole switch to Thunder Basin, but I guess I would have expected a little bit more, maybe, out of Campbell County, just starting to kind of maybe try and regain some traction this year. But
I agree. I think this is their first year where it's finally split.
Okay.
And they were really turning it on last year. Now, I think this maybe speaks more of Rock Springs, because now Rock Springs, I think they've got a new coach. He's in his 3rd year, I believe. And as you know, Zach, Rock Springs has some athletes. They can have some kids. And so I think 4A is going to be interesting this year because, I think Kelly Walsh is on the rise. This is hard to tell unless we go watch some film. But I think Rock Springs and then Campbell County is going to be interesting. And then obviously Thunder Basin, Cheyenne East. And then, I mean, it's all pretty competitive. And I will say, since being on the Sheridan staff, I watched the Sheridan Laramie game. Laramie had some kids too. I think that score is not really of what they actually have for week 1, but this is something that will be kind of a fun little segments we can do.
Sure.
Kind of a little fun little deal. But one thing I want to hit on, since we talked about COVID right before this, as a coach, for people out there, like, why I'm kind of like, I'll wear a mask if we need to wear a mask, is because I want the kids to play. I want to coach. Like, I'll do, put me in a hazmat suit if you want me. Like, if that's what we need to do for you to feel comfortable about having, ages 13 to 18 play a sport. Okay, like, well, whatever, like, let's do it. And then just from a strategic standpoint as well, what's interesting, Zach, is if you have a cold, with all the restrictions and stuff now, you've got to stay home. Obviously, you're staying home. You kind of have to let the school district know. I think it's really up to the parents, but if you're playing a sport, we kind of encourage, like, hey, go get tested, right?
Yeah.
Then we know, like, okay, you didn't have COVID, so you're fine.
Yeah.
But if you do have COVID, then it's nice because it's like you stayed home already, you quarantined.
Right.
We can kind of watch I do ninth graders, so it's like we can isolate them and watch them, and then if more kids get sick, then it's like maybe we take a week off or whatever, or whatever we need to do. But
sure.
Anyways, I was thinking about this the other day about football, for whatever reason, right? Because the NFL is going to go, and they're going to go.
Yeah.
They're playing next week on the 10th.
Yeah.
And it's like, football coaches usually find out ways to get stuff done, or football players, right?
Yeah.
So, like, anyways, I was thinking about that. I'm like, the NFL is going to figure it out. Like, they'll find a way to, track these guys, track the players, and make sure they have a season. And not to say anything bad about the other sports, but it's kind of like that team effort, on a football team, you can really pick a goal and say, hey, this is what we're going to strive to do. So anyways, for anyone out there that's like, don't play sports, it's like, we can figure it out. We can keep the kids healthy, and we can,
for sure,
we'll make it work.
Sure. Who does Sheridan have coming up this week?
They go down to Cheyenne South.
Okay.
So they have a long trip to Cheyenne, but they'll play South, and then on the 11th, September 11th, they will be home and they will play Central. So that'll be kind of a good week 3 matchup. And then we'll kind of, I've got it all up here, but that's kind of the I think that'll be a fun, because I think last year they had a nice kind of September 11th. I don't think it was on the 11th, but I'm pretty sure we did something for like first responders and stuff as well. So
awesome.
Some oil and gas news. Again, some sage grouse conservation groups. I don't know what they're griping at, or if they're just so happy that the sage grouse numbers are up this year, but they're kind of in Montana. They're kind of going after oil and gas up in Montana. They're trying to curb, BLM and all that kind of stuff up there. Again, over a 10-year study, sage grouse is up pretty high in Montana and Wyoming. So I'm not sure what they're complaining about. Rocky Mountain Power, they're still going to put in their $2 billion transmission line through Wyoming. So that's good news. Hopefully they go with it, and that's just a right of way, so nothing transmission lines, but that'll be work for a lot of people throughout Wyoming, especially Western Wyoming. And then we'll probably post up an interview from Orion Mine and kind of what they expect out of their purchase of Occidental. Sounds like they're going after some rare earth minerals, which is what Senator Beitman kind of hinted at. And it sounds like they're interested in like lithium, copper, coal, and what they can use with coal. So that's good news. We'll have that up there.
Yeah.
And then lastly, then I'll let Zach kind of take over the City of Sheridan police search. The governor has agreed with the National Forest kind of changing some rules about lodging and kind of management. And they're just kind of in agreement, state agreement, over grasslands and things like that. I think that's good. I think more power to the state. The state of Wyoming does a great job handling conservation and environment. So this shouldn't really scare anybody. He's just agreeing to, the state's going to take more of a helpful role with the national forest and the grasslands, all that kind of stuff. And then kind of federal news, which covers Wyoming. This is kind of good timing by the governor, I think. The BLM and the national forest are looking at changing some redundant rules in regards to how you manage BLM and how you manage national forests, especially when it comes to energy development. This announcement came with obvious, pushback from conservation groups, which is interesting because really the announcement was we're just going to look at redundant rules. They didn't really have any rules in particular. They were just saying we're going to look at, if the BLM makes you do something, does the national forest make you do it as well for the same piece of land? If so, yes, okay, maybe one of them gets eliminated. I think that's a good thing. I'm not sure what would freak anybody out about that. And I'm kind of happy this is happening finally. This was, as an energy guy, I was really hoping now, Trump's had a lot going on, don't get me wrong, but this was something I was really hoping he would be pushing a lot further in energy and kind of conservation is, there's redundancies in federal protection and federal programs and federal agencies, which I think everyone would agree. If you disagree, you've probably not worked with federal agencies before. So him being a businessman, I'm kind of excited that, hey, finally we're going to smooth things out, and it doesn't mean we're defunding any of these programs. It just, hey, we're going to smooth it out, make it faster, so interesting. We'll kind of keep an eye on that if we ever see something. Like I said, there's no real rule changed yet. They just said that they're going to look at, their redundancies. So that was kind of our energy conservation notes there, Zach.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm all for reducing the amount of red tape and hoops you have to jump through. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so looking at the city of Sheridan now, Rich Adrian's announced, it was a couple months ago, his retirement. I believe he served 37 years as just in the police department and then 10 years as a police chief.
Mm-hmm.
And a little interesting development where let's see, the city administrator has announced they're going to look for a external hire. So there's a process to go through for bringing somebody from the police department inside already existing internal officer and promoting them to the police chief. And the city administrator has decided he's going to move or look for an external hire. And so the Sheridan Press reported here, pull this up. This is kind of an interesting thing that we've talked about a little bit, why the city administrator role is so important. I mean, this is the first real major test of what the city administrators had to do in Sheridan. And so let's see here. Sorry for not having this up, or I had a quote, but it's not the one I wanted. The city has not yet fully ironed out the process for the external candidates. They're going to begin advertising the position soon. And they're looking for more of a regional hire, not necessarily national. McRae, the city administrator, announced they want somebody who's maybe more in tune to the values of our region. I quoted here, "We want someone who understands the Western culture and the challenges we'd face instead of a metropolitan city on the East Coast." So that's good. At least we're looking for that sort of role. We're not just going to pick the first guy that shows up. He did, the city administrator, McRae, wanted to, emphasize that this isn't anything on the officers who applied, the candidates within Sheridan Police Department. He said they're a great team and they're a bunch of good guys, and he hopes they continue to apply and throw their hat in. But he's really wanting to be thorough in this search. And I think, again, this is his first real test as an administrator. I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Really show that you're committed and devoted to this position and serving the city. So,
Yeah, one of my comments there on one of his quotes was, that's a very diplomatic way of saying it's not you, it's me.
right.
He's got to save face. He's got to have a good working relationship with the existing officers. But that was a very diplomatic way of saying it wasn't you, but we're going to look elsewhere. I find that's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is a great kind of test. We've kind of already talked about this position before and why kind of the mayor race is important. We're going to see how McCray does here in picking a new police chief. I'm glad he's saying regional, which, yeah, we obviously don't want a guy coming from a coast, a big metropolitan city. But I do kind of question, we do have some really great officers, so I'm kind of curious why, and some of them are local. I mean, so anyway, I get it. It's a bigger position. Some guys may not be ready for it, but anyways. So, but yeah, no, this is fascinating. It'll be kind of curious to see who they pick and what route they go. So
another interesting to bring up about this is that the police chief Adrian's retires effective September 18th. So coming up. So we don't have a viable candidate as we know of, and that is a date that's fast approaching. So I'm not sure. I should have looked how that plays out if they don't have. I'm sure there's just an interim police chief.
Yeah.
But
because that's right. Because he retired. He announced his retirement a while ago.
Yeah, this summer. Yeah.
So they've probably. I better give our city administrator more credit. They've probably looked at all the local guys then. That's why they're expanding their search then. So he's saving his butt. That was a diplomatic answer on why they didn't make the cut. So
right.
By not saying they didn't make the cut, but it's like they didn't though, because if we're 2 weeks away,
we'd be looking elsewhere. Yeah.
But anyways, I'll give him more credit. He must have been vetting them, and who knows? Maybe some guys, job market's hard. Sometimes you apply to a job and maybe you're like, never mind. Like, oh, especially police chief, you're not, as a police chief, you're not really a cop. You're kind of I wouldn't say a politician at that point, but you've got to be very political and very strategic on how you say things and certain things. So, well, sure. This will be interesting to follow, and that'll be kind of fun. And other than that, Zach, we just pulled up, kind of talking about like, hey, let's open up. Let's get back to normal. Don King Days sounds like they're going full bore this weekend. That's usually what they do over the Labor Day weekend out here in Sheridan at the polo fields. I would imagine they've got, kind of restrictions, probably wearing masks in close quarters, and but it's out in the polo field, so it's outside, so I think it'll be okay. And then at Eaton's Ranch on next weekend, so the 13th, the Wolf Creek Wrangle, that's a fundraiser run for Habitat of Humanity, I believe. So nice. That's kind of your local events coming up.
Yeah, good stuff. That's good.
Yeah,
people need something to go out and do. So
get outside, and I think let's get back. Let's get back to work. Let's get back to being social, and be respectful too of other people. Like I said, like I'll wear a mask if that makes you feel safer. We covered a lot, Zach. We're going to be sharing a lot of information on the website and our social media platforms about where you can track all that COVID CARES Act funding, the state, what the state's doing with it. So this is very beneficial for everyone listening, and
Yeah.
hopefully everyone keeps listening in and keeps sharing us out.
Yeah, for sure. We've had some really awesome interviews, a lot of interviews with representatives and local politicians, and yeah, it's really cool to see how we're growing pretty quickly. So
Yeah, and Zach, I will tell you, we've had a lot of people have come up to me. They've loved the interviews, which I think, yeah, because we've got the accessibility to all of our representatives and senators.
yeah,
But I've gotten a lot of feedback on our interview with Cheyenne Byert.
hmm
They all love that, and then obviously like Cyrus, Mark Kenner, Bo
yeah,
Beitman, and even actually somebody did catch me about Spencer Kazara. The
hmm
local interviews, which we need to probably give those guys all another round after the primary.
yeah,
But yeah, no, this is keep sharing us out, especially Sheridan folk,
yeah,
get the word out, and then hopefully we grow this thing even more, and hopefully we can provide good stuff. That's what we want to
for
do now.
sure.
We don't want to push any agenda, but
Right.
all righty. That's it for episode, what is this? This is episode 5. Go Be
All right.
Wyoming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.